We have looked at thousands of data points on previous election campaigns, from social listening, from activity around email and around direct mail, and we've brought all that advice together for you today, hopefully in sufficient time before plans are set in stone around election communications. And we'll be focusing specifically on how to promote registration and promoting how to vote. And Can, I'm John Paul from Can. We are public sector paid media specialists. We measure many different channels from paid media and then optimize towards reducing cost per outcome. A lot of that is about reducing waste, which we will get to in a little moment. Just to briefly cover the statutory duty, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but you have your elections officers have a statutory duty to promote participation, registration, and also to make sure it's clear on how to vote. In our analysis of multiple elections campaigns, and these included the referendum in 2016, the many elections that have happened since then, so it's got a rich data set, we could see that there was a lot of investment in channels and tactics that didn't yield much of a result, and quite small experimental investments in new channels that really did most of the outcome driving. So what we want to do is equip you today with the ability to advise your colleagues in elections teams on how to shift investment from things that are proven to be less than effective towards things that really work well. I think it's worth summarizing the data that we looked into around who we're really talking about when we're driving registration and driving turnout. This person is young, they're a private renter normally, usually from a lower income background, and are overrepresented amongst the global majority. So this audience is under-registered and participates less than the average. So I think it's really worth understanding that these are the people we want to be reaching and need to focus our attention on. Now, when you look at where they are and the channels that they choose, it becomes very clear that social media and digital interaction is absolutely key. So top of the bill today, would like to bring in Helena Hornby from Orlo, and she's going to share with us some insight and tactics and ways you can use social media, and particularly the Orlo insight and engagement tools, to support your comms team and your organisation throughout elections.
If you're in comms and the election comms makes you feel a bit sort of edgy, that's not an alone thing. You know, lots of people feel that way. You know, pre-election times, it's when teams are expected to be fast and accurate and neutral all at the same time. But you know, the good news is that I think it's that good listening, simple factual comms do a lot of the heavy lifting in helping you out in these situations. Trust matters more than the volume of churning out stuff. People aren't looking to be persuaded by you. They want clarity, information, and to be heard so that they can make up their own mind when it comes to voting. So your audiences are talking openly on social media, on forums, in comment sections. You know that. Tracking those in conversations is what's going to help you understand what it is that matters to the people that you want to engage with. Listening to them and doing that listening is a neutral activity. It's safe and it is allowed during the pre-election period, crucially. Setting up your listening streams to follow local election related chat is really a useful thing for you to do. If you focus on key questions like, do I need ID? How do I register? What time are polling stations open till? You can even listen to the ever wonderful Dogs at Polling Stations and hop onto that content. But it's important to note that you should be listening at scale, not just sort of guessing what you think it is from vibes and from a few messages. Also pay attention to the tone, the emotions and the sentiment like confusion, frustration, sarcasm, and you'll be able to pick up on disengagement through that as well. That'll give you critical insight before you even start to publish a single post. what we hear time and time again is that young people do care about democracy, but there are often practical barriers. It might be unclear information, assumptions about what they know, or a tone that feels distant or patronising. Nobody likes to be patronised, but I've got teenage daughters, especially teenagers do not like to be patronised. Good engagement will always start with listening. So spot the confusion early, respond clearly, and make sure that the information is easy to find. So some of the examples that you will get around that that would come out from that listening: confusion about polling stations, misunderstanding about voter ID, questions from, say, students or young renters about where they're registered or what it means for them, parents asking how first-time voters in their household can take part. Those are the kinds of things that you might hear. So if you are using a listening solution like Orlo or another one, others are available, but I'm from Orlo, you can prepare those key messages and your answers to those questions in advance. But the goal for you here is that everybody who is involved and responding is giving the same answers in a plain language so that it's consistent and people are receiving the consistent information. That's easier for you too, if to make sure that everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet. And it makes sure that you do what's appropriate. So, it doesn't mean always responding to every single comment. Often it means doing something to address that more generally. That could be update the web page. If people are saying that we can't find the polling information, we'll update that so it's clearer on the website. You can pin a post. You could give a briefing for colleagues so that everybody is giving that same answer. Mis and disinformation at local level, can be quite low level, but it's fast moving. It often starts with things like wrong dates, incorrect polling locations, claims about who can and can't vote, rumours about candidates, for example. And if it's not spotted early, it spreads, and that's where social listening really helps. It gives you real-time monitoring so that you can spot spikes in conversations across the keywords that you identify, and those keyword alerts can surface those rumors quickly, especially if you've got maybe a potentially contentious candidate in your area, for example. And that gives you the opportunity to assess, is it a confusion issue? Is it actually misinformation or disinformation if there's something malicious about it? Or is it something like a bad screenshot being reshared? And it gives you a chance to spot and jump on that. The key point for me to land with you is that speed and nipping it in the bud and being accurate will help you to build trust with the right audiences. If you don't say anything or you delay, it creates space for rumours and things to grow.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the kinds of requests you might be receiving in the coming weeks and months, and how from using data from thousands of campaigns, we've been able to come up with some recommendations. So when you run a campaign and you properly measure everything, it's quite easy to see which channels are driving reach, interaction, and then outcomes. And what we've found out very, very frequently is that radio, TV, paid for out of home, and even local press advertising doesn't work. Now, what we mean by doesn't work isn't that you'll get nothing from it, but it means that it has a very, very high cost per outcome. But also, digital is not a panacea. Just because something's online doesn't mean it delivers really good value and low cost per outcomes. Spotify, for example, really high cost per thousand impressions and poor response. TikTok doesn't have very good geo-targeting capabilities, so you can't just target your area, which, especially when neighboring areas aren't holding elections, that's a huge problem. What does work really, really well is using your free out of home. So rather than paying JCDecaux or people like that for it, councils are normally the biggest media owner in their area, and they can use their digital 6 sheets for free. So that often scratches the itch of seeing the campaign everywhere without draining your campaign budget. Also, website advertising, particularly remarketing to council tax pages, is a super tactic for getting under-registered, just moved groups to work with you. And can never be understated, but the power of email. Email e-newsletters are often the most read publication in a given area. They often outreach the local newspaper and even many social media channels in terms of actual views per week or per month. So using these channels and using this estate costs little or nothing and gets you vast reach with the audiences that you want to target. If you work with eShot, they have an array of pre-made templates which you can plug in using the sort of central to local messaging from the Electoral Commission, also creating quick spin-up e-news or e-nurture functions where people can get email updates delivered to them. It's almost like people opting in to receiving election communications from you. But then your e-newsletters, the large distribution newsletters, can have advertising space in them, which will be seen and interacted with by many thousands of people. An essential channel for ensuring people aren't excluded, particularly if you aren't paying for all of those low impact above the line channels, is direct mail. People often talk about the digital divide. The digital divide is actually quite small. However, if you're that, meaning that you have no access to the internet whatsoever, but there are people on lower incomes and also what I call the grudgingly digital, who might have a smartphone and a laptop, but absolutely abhor using it. It's very important that they're included and they're reached by campaigns. And so using digital dip zone analysis helps us identify where these people are and make sure we can upweight communications to them, physical communications, to include them. So very, very important. Another issue with voter registration and turnout is that databases of addresses are often out of date and do not include new builds or new developments, which can mean you end up accidentally excluding significant proportions of your new residents. Also, students are frequently unaware that they can be registered to vote both at their parents' or their home address and where they're currently at university. Now, some universities have auto-register, auto-enroll programs, but with Letterbox, you can identify where do, where don't, where you've got low registration, and then really target communications, physical communications at those areas. And also your council tax data will be a really strong source of people who have just moved. So you can have those remarketing to council tax pages from your site, and then also delivering physical communications to just the households that you need to, keeping that waste down, keeping that frequency up, making sure that you're fulfilling that statutory duty. Looking at paid digital channels, if we're zooming in on younger audiences, because TikTok doesn't let you geo-target well enough, it has to be Snapchat. Luckily, has very, very high reach amongst younger audiences, but also targeting young people and parents and the wider population using national and local news is highly effective in terms of reaching nearly 100% of any population. Meta is good, but there are many concerns around anything that it regards or its algorithm regards as being potentially political. It tends to either hold back or stop reach with it. It is also a channel which delivers very high numbers, but not much in terms of action out the other side. So I'd say use Meta sparingly, maybe for remarketing from those council tax pages and things like that. But also it's really useful to intercept search. So when people are searching around key themes that might be pertinent to them, questions around elections, you can appear amongst search results to bring people to the right information. So just to summarize the advice from today, start by listening and listen all the way through and react quickly with clear, non-partisan information. Use previous campaign data to reduce waste. There is a lot spent on things that have no measurable impact or outcome. And that means that budget and resources are going to things, are pulled away from things that actually work well. Use your own estate. It is a gold mine of free reach, free resource, and the perfect audiences that you want to bring in. Also, as you measure, make sure you've got evidence to prove that you've fulfilled your statutory duty to reach everybody and to encourage everybody to register and to turn out. And it is therefore absolutely essential that you measure everything so that you can prove that you've done it, so that you can optimize during communications, and you can then learn for the future.